Hey everyone, Ray here. This time we've managed to get our hands on 4 phones from Xiaomi and Poco. Some of them, in particular 2 of them, Xiaomi 15T Pro and the newly launched Poco F8 Ultra, share a relatively similar price range. So, which is the better pick for your money? In this comparison, we'll also be having the even more budget-friendly Poco F8 Pro and all the way up to their top-of-the-line ultimate flagship, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. And you're right, the Xiaomi 17 Ultra should be just around the corner. That will certainly be even more attractive if you're looking for the absolute golden standard for smartphone photography. So for some of you out there who are looking for a relatively more budget-friendly, overall decent phone with not the best but a decent camera setup, a long-lasting battery, a large flat display, or in fact a relatively small one-hand-friendly device with all the AI features that literally every brand is now pushing harder than ever. Oh, not to forget the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 processor here on the Poco F8 Ultra, reliable thermal management that is based on liquid cooling technology, and great speaker quality. Now we'll be comparing these 4 phones from Xiaomi and Poco directly. Is it necessary to pay extra for the Xiaomi 15 Ultra? How to choose one between the Xiaomi 15T Pro and the similarly priced Poco F8 Ultra? Now the most obvious difference between the Pro model and the Ultra model here on the Poco lineup is definitely the 6.59-inch display here on the Pro model. It's the first time for Xiaomi to adopt this not oversized but not too small screen size here, together with the rounded corners and the subtle 3D curvature on the metal frame. It does feels surprisingly seamless and well built. Now moving on to the larger devices here, the Xiaomi 15T Pro and the Poco F8 Ultra. They do share a relatively similar footprint with a large flat display with minimal bezels. So here on the 15T Pro, if you pay enough of attention here, it's actually got a tiny bit marginally smaller 6.83-inch display. On the contrary, the Poco F8 Ultra, they've actually pushed it even further to the 6.9 inches standard. So in real life, and based on my experience, I would rather say they're pretty much the same. Now the back of the phone, the Poco F8 Ultra does feature a 2.1 channel speaker setup. The circular module here on the camera plateau that is crafted with metal. It's a dedicated subwoofer on a phone that is co-tuned with Bose. We'll definitely be testing out the sound quality shortly. And finally, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra here is the only model that features a 3D curved glass on both the front and the back. It also comes with a relatively more compact 6.73 inches display. Now we know the 17 Ultra is coming with a larger flat display. So moving on to other hardware features that are worth mentioning, ultrasonic fingerprint sensors now are standard on even the Poco F8 Pro, the Ultra and the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. Not on the Xiaomi 15T Pro however, that's an optical sensor there. Now all 4 of them have full IP68 dust and water resistance, dual SIM and eSIM support is also a standard here. Now let's compare their speaker quality. The 2.1 channels speaker setup here on the Poco F8 Ultra, here in the settings menu, further going into the sound and vibration menu. As you can see here inside sound effects, every single software tuning feature you've got here on the F8 Ultra, you've got that here on the F8 Pro as well, including the equalizer and immersive sound, surround sound effect here. So what really separates the F8 Ultra from the competition is the bass. Now, one of the biggest highlights of this video, the camera, especially here on the Xiaomi 15T Pro and the Poco F8 Ultra, they do share a relatively similar price range and specifications when it comes to the camera. Now, moment of truth, how do they actually compare in real life? Now in short, we have Leica branded camera system here on the Xiaomi 15T Pro. We should be looking at optics and software, especially color reproduction, co-engineered with Leica. The real question we've got here is the Poco F8 Ultra actually features an even more up-to-date Light Fusion 950 sensor that is borrowed from the Xiaomi 17 series. We're also looking at the exact same 5x periscope telephoto lens here on the Poco F8 Ultra that is the same as that on the Xiaomi 15T Pro. Now, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra is definitely the golden standard we have here. Speaking of that, we have a 1-inch sensor for the main camera here. We should be looking at the most promising photos here. From ultra-wide 1-inch sensor main camera all the way to 100x ultra long-range zoom. Now, last but not least, don't forget the Poco F8 Pro. We do have a more advanced camera system on the Ultra variant, so what we will be focusing on here is the main camera, the ultra-wide-angle camera, and ultra-long-range zoom quality. How closely can it actually perform to the rest of the competition if we put them all side by side? Now look, it could be the most commonly overlooked aspect of the camera system, the ultra-wide-angle lens. In terms of HDR performance, we've actually observed that all 4 phones here performed relatively similarly. So if we take a close look, the Poco F8 Pro's actually got the weakest, maybe the most basic, ultra-wide-angle camera out of the 4. It's an 8 megapixels 15mm ultra-wide lens with a 1/4-inch sensor. The optics, the lens itself also matters. We could be looking at more pronounced chromatic aberration here on the Poco F8 Pro. The second last in this competition, however, surprisingly is the Xiaomi 15T Pro. It uses a 1/3.06-inch 12-megapixel sensor looking through a 15mm ultra-wide-angle lens. Now comparing it to the Poco F8 Ultra and the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, the two Ultra phones here definitely brought sharper images with a 50-megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera, while here on the Poco F8 Ultra we have a 1/2.88-inch sensor, collecting light particles from a slightly narrower 18mm lens. It's doing a remarkably great job in terms of the actual sharpness and chromatic aberration suppression. The image quality here can actually match that on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. So we do have a slightly larger 1/2.76-inch sensor here on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, looking through a significantly wider 14mm ultra-wide-angle lens. Now we're really pushing these cameras to their absolute limit. Now the main camera. As we all know, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra comes with a 1-inch sensor for the main camera. In terms of noise control and low light performance, we shouldn't be expecting day and night difference here. With all the aid of AI, or in fact computational photography, the algorithm itself, what cannot be optimized or emulated is the greater dynamic range we usually have on a larger sensor. That is due to the ability to gather more light at the very first place, and it will also allow richer color reproduction. While here on the Xiaomi 15T Pro, and of course the 15 Ultra, they have all the color profiles, the Leica Vibrant and Leica Authentic color profile. In this comparison, we'll be comparing images that are taken with a standard color profile that is available on the Poco F8 Pro and the Ultra, to photos that are taken in Leica Vibrant mode on the 15 Ultra and the 15T Pro. Meanwhile, the Leica Authentic mode here really does mimic the color tones of a classic Leica DSLR or mirrorless camera. That gives you a more contrasty, less saturated, artistic film look that could be ideal for street photography. Right, back to the hardware and the actual photo comparison. It's worth noticing that here on the Poco F8 Ultra, the main camera sensor is actually the newest hardware. Out of the 4, the sensor size itself is 1/1.31-inch with 50 megapixels in terms of the resolution. Now, interestingly, that's actually on a par with the Xiaomi 15T Pro, so that on the Xiaomi 15T Pro is actually the last-gen Light Fusion 900 series that can be found on the Xiaomi 15 series. Though of course on the Xiaomi lineup you'll be benefiting from the Leica color tuning, so theoretically you should be looking at better dynamic range and color reproduction with the hardware on the Poco F8 Ultra. Oh, don't forget the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 processor should contribute to better image processing as well. And finally, we're getting the Light Fusion 800 sensor here on the Poco F8 Pro. That's identical to the last gen Poco F7 Ultra. It's not bad at all, it's actually a 1/1.55-inch sensor. Now, moment of truth, which phone actually took the best image? Now this time around, the crown goes to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. Again, in terms of color fringing and chromatic aberration control, we can clearly tell the Xiaomi 15 Ultra thus comes with superior optics design other than just a larger sensor. Now the Xiaomi 15T Pro and surprisingly the Poco F8 Ultra is actually performing really closely. Now in this particular set of photos, we'll be zooming to 2x using the main camera sensor, and I was accidentally using the 60mm telephoto lens on the Poco F8 Pro here, though what really matters is the 1-inch sensor here on the 15 Ultra. It actually also delivers shallower depth of field. And that is not taken with portrait mode whatsoever, it's totally optical. And now for dynamic range, this is it. Again, we are looking at the best color ranging control here on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, followed very closely by the Poco F8 Ultra, then the Xiaomi 15T Pro, and eventually the Poco F8 Pro. Here is what really captured my attention. Now, the shadows here on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra may look a little bit darker compared to the rest of the competition, though if you look closely, the 15 Ultra here is actually delivering the most true to life and richest contrast in the shadows, and that also comes with the most amount of details. What about during the night? The 1-inch sensor here on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, we're not just looking at brighter images, less noise and sharper colors. Instead, we have light and shadows that are more dynamic, combined with the richer colors and the contrast in the colors. For serious photographers and you're planning to use your smartphone to take your photos while on the go, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra is definitely the best pick for you. In the meantime, for everybody else, is the Xiaomi 15T Pro, even the Poco F8 Ultra, good enough for day-to-day photography? And as always, we'll be pushing them to the absolute limit, even for low-light photography. Now, I wasn't planning to have a moonshot comparison in this video at the very first place. However, even at just 1x, this generation of phones can actually retrieve all the details from the highlights, cropping the image all the way to the corner and a really small portion of the image at the very edge of the top right corner. Now, the Poco F8 Ultra surprisingly did the best job in retrieving all the details in the highlight, which occupy only a tiny portion of the frame. What really surprised me is that the tiny subtle contrast between the highlight and the shadows is also captured there. Right, this time we've spent more time than usual comparing the main camera and the ultra-wide-angle camera, how differently a phone from Xiaomi with the extra tuning from Leica performs compared to those from Poco without. Moving on to the biggest highlight of this video, the telephoto lens. Well, here again, the Xiaomi 15T Pro clearly has an edge in terms of the hardware with its larger 1/1.4-inch sensor that comes with 200 megapixels. And the extra hardware we've got here is that 3x telephoto lens between the main camera and the 4.3x optical zoom lens. Now, if we narrow the scope to just comparing the image quality between the Poco F8 Ultra and the Xiaomi 15T Pro, for the hardware, they are identical. So what could be separating them apart could be the software. Before that, finally, here on the Poco F8 Pro, on papers it should be delivering 5x lossless zoom, while in reality, surprisingly, the Poco F8 Ultra, in a harsh backlight sunset, it shows better highlight control and color reproduction in the shadows areas. Naturally, we'll be testing it again in various lighting and scenes, and pushing them to the absolute limit. Now, the moment of truth. Which phone actually took the sharpest image at their native focal length on the telephoto lens? The crown goes to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra again. Now, this time around is actually out of my expectation, as I was personally expecting very similar texture and detail rendering across the Poco F8 Ultra, the Xiaomi 15T Pro, and of course the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. So in reality, even at 12 megapixels output and at their native focal length, the 200 megapixels telephoto camera sensor on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra actually delivered more details and richer texture even at 12 megapixels output. And here it comes to the even more interesting bit. If we put the image taken by the Poco F8 Ultra side by side to that taken with the Xiaomi 15T Pro, we'll actually be seeing richer colors, higher contrast, and higher sharpness as well. Here on the left, on the photo taken by the Poco F8 Ultra. Now, similar to what we've seen on the main camera, here on the Poco F8 Ultra, we have significantly more aggressive and pronounced sharpening effect here on the Poco F8 Ultra. That could certainly bring sharper images when it comes to street photography or city landscape photography, though when it comes to natural landscape, in my opinion, the softer, less pronounced sharpening effect here on the Xiaomi 15T Pro, that could be producing some more natural photos. Now we can clearly tell the Xiaomi lineup, they are certainly putting effort in bringing true-to-life colors and light rendering. In the meantime, here on the Poco F8 Ultra, we will be getting a more balanced and usable photo for day-to-day photography. Now the next question would be, with the even more promising hardware on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, combined with the next-gen processor and camera ISP, are we going to see a major upgrade compared to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra here? And how well the Poco F8 Ultra performs compared to that? Well, that will obviously be another story and a comparison video. Now for extreme ultra long-range zoom at 20x and beyond, all four of the phones here uses AI super zoom for anything beyond 20x, and that could be toggled on and off. Well, for this comparison, we've turned that on all the devices here. At 20x, the gap actually becomes clearer. We have a sharp and natural photo here taken by the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. What actually intrigued me here is that the Poco F8 Ultra, possibly with the newer chipset, and maybe Xiaomi's done something to its algorithm, the overall sharpness here and the level of details here on the photo taken by the Poco F8 Ultra is actually almost on a par with that on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. While the images taken by the Xiaomi 15T Pro here, they are generally softer and more natural, if I may. On the contrary, the Poco F8 Ultra delivers photos that are sharper and more contrasty. This could bring images that are perceived to be sharper than those taken with the Xiaomi 15T Pro. Now the ultimate test here, zooming all the way from 20x to 50, even to 100x, the photos taken with the Poco F8 Ultra as well as the Xiaomi 15T Pro are actually more usable than I've expected, considering their price range. So if we have to pick one, obviously the Xiaomi 15 Ultra again. At 100x zoom, we can clearly tell there's a major difference here between the photos taken by the Xiaomi 15 Ultra compared to those taken with the Xiaomi 15T Pro and the Poco F8 Ultra, as we're simply looking at one of the best telephoto cameras here on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. It could still be your choice if you prefer a phone that comes with a really powerful telephoto camera. On the contrary, the photos taken by the Poco F8 Ultra and the Xiaomi 15T Pro, even at 100x zoom, those could be more usable than you've been expecting. Now let's not forget portrait photography. This could just be another major difference between the Xiaomi lineup and the Poco lineup. As we have here on the Xiaomi 15T Pro and the 15 Ultra, they come with two Leica color profiles when it comes to portrait photography. The Leica portrait profile here gives a more 3D, actual camera-like light processing. You could be expecting lower color saturation and higher contrast. While here, with the Master Portrait mode, you'll be getting brighter skin tones. Now the question is how similar the Master Portrait mode here is compared to the standard color profile on the Poco. You'll be generally getting greater contrast here, especially on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, the micro contrast on the skin tone and the image overall. Those are rendered more delicately, resulting in more true-to-life colors and images with more depth to it. Is it a deciding factor for you to choose between the Xiaomi 15T Pro and the Poco F8 Ultra, or even the 15 Ultra? Maybe it could be it for you, or maybe not. What we can clearly confirm from this competition, however, is that the Poco F8 Pro, even the most entry-level here out of the four, already delivers portrait mode edge detection that is on a par with other top-tier flagship phones here. And there's one more thing when it comes to the advantage we've got here on the Poco lineup. Despite we having the Leica color tuning here on the Xiaomi lineup, we are losing the support of the flash here. On the contrary, on the Poco F8 series here, we can utilize the flashlight here together with the bokeh effect in the portrait mode here. It will certainly help when it comes to extreme low-light portrait photography. So the Poco F8 series actually got an edge when it comes to this particular aspect. While on the Xiaomi lineup, you might be able to recreate a more cinematic look when it comes to portrait photography. So that's on the photography side, while here on the video side of the story. Now, just in case if video is your priority, you might consider upgrading to the F8 Ultra. Due to the Poco F8 Pro here, the ultra-wide-angle lens here shoots only up to 1080p, while the main and the telephoto lens here do support 4K. Same here on the F8 Ultra, 15T Pro and 15 Ultra. Now, when it comes to video capabilities, the Poco F8 Ultra actually matches the Xiaomi 15T Pro. They both record 4K videos on both the ultra-wide-angle camera and the main camera, as well as the 5x optical zoom lens. So there's one thing that might be worth noticing: we're not getting 4K 120 video support here on the Poco F8 Ultra, despite we're looking at even more up-to-date main sensor and the same telephoto camera sensor as on the Xiaomi 15T Pro. Now here on the Xiaomi 15T Pro, we can actually record 4K 120 video on the main camera. Not on the telephoto camera, however. That will be reserved for the 15 Ultra only in this comparison. That's basically everything we've got for the camera test. Now, before we wrap everything up, we'll also be covering the performance of the processor, thermal management, battery life, and AI features. Right here on the Poco F8 Ultra, we've got the latest and greatest Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. Now, even taking a step back here on the Poco F8 Pro, it's actually got the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor that is still really capable in 2025 or even in 2026. So we might be seeing really similar performance here on the Poco F8 Pro compared to the top-of-the-line flagship Xiaomi 15 Ultra here. And last but not least, the Xiaomi 15T Pro here features the MediaTek Dimensity 9400 Plus. That's also a processor that's built on TSMC's 3nm manufacturing process. Now let's talk about gaming and GPU performance. If we compare the Poco F8 Ultra to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, we should be looking at a performance gain of around 26% over the year. What really surprised me is the lowest performance across the stress test. That was shockingly close to the peak performance of a last-gen 8 Elite. That could be indicating really stable performance even in heavy loading. Now, just to make sure that's what's really happening here, we will be running our ultimate stress test. That is a 1 hour long AnTuTu benchmark run. Now, each run lasts approximately 15 minutes and will be running 4 times consecutively in a row. As for the peak performance, the Poco F8 Ultra's got a lift in performance of about 29%. Now look, even the lowest run here on the Poco F8 Pro, that's actually outperformed the highest run on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. Now in real life and actual gaming session, here on the Poco F8 Ultra we've got an extra wild boost mode. By going further into the enhanced visuals menu, here on the Poco F8 Ultra only we've got an extra super resolution mode and smart frame rate mode that can be toggled on and off. They work together to 1. Upscale any game to 1.5K resolution that matches the screen's native resolution, and 2. Boosts the actual frame rate of the game to 120 frames per second. Now, in my experience, turning them on at the same time could generate extra heat, so if I have to choose one, I'd say gaming at 120 frames per second. That would definitely be more noticeable than the 1.5K upscaling. On the contrary, here on the Poco F8 Pro, we won't be having the luxury to choose between either of them. What we have here on the wild boost mode on the F8 Pro here. So if gaming is indeed your top priority, the Poco F8 Ultra is really easy to recommend. With a large and flat 6.9 inches display, large-sized battery, and the next-gen Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 processor is the clear winner here. And speaking of battery life, even on the smaller variant, the F8 Pro, the battery that's got packed inside is not small at all. That's got 6210 mAh, while the one on the larger variant, the Ultra model here, that is rated at 6500 mAh. Those are both the global version. Now again, we know the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is coming to the global market as well, and that could be bringing an even larger battery to the market. We'll see. Well, back to the reality, here on the Xiaomi 15T Pro we've got a 5500 mAh battery, while here on the 15 Ultra is packing a 5410 mAh cell. Now time for a real-world battery life test. So we have set the screen brightness to 50% on all these cell phones, streamed 1 hour of YouTube videos, scrolled another hour of Facebook, and last but not least played another hour of League of Legends Wild Rift. Right, here are the results. Proportionally speaking, based on the data we've got from the test, the Poco F8 Ultra can deliver roughly 11.5 hours of screen on time, and that's for continuous use covering gaming, social media, and video streaming. And you're right, despite its larger battery size, it did outperform the last-gen Poco F7 Ultra and F7 Pro, though it didn't even outperform the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, or even the Xiaomi 15T Pro. It could with a newly launched Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 chip that is not perfectly optimized here, We're not exactly sure about that, so we may do another battery life test when we're doing another comparison video to other phones from other brands. All in all, which of these phones is the best pick? For the overall balance considering performance and thermal management, AI capabilities, camera system and speaker quality, as well as the display quality, here on the Poco F8 Ultra, especially with that next-gen Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 processor, and the 2.1 channel speaker setup that is co-tuned with both, you'll be having the best ever speaker quality on a smartphone. Now, except from the color tuning, the main camera sensor as well as the ultra-wide-angle lens here on the Poco F8 Ultra, those are actually superior than those on the Xiaomi 15T Pro, and Poco's completing the package with a competitive telephoto lens here. Now, if photography is indeed your top priority, the color science on the 15T Pro that is from the Xiaomi Leica partnership, that is something you won't be getting on a Poco. Now, if you're searching for a phone with best-in-class performance on a budget, while screen size and the camera are less important, the Poco F8 Pro can actually be the ideal phone right now. It's truly admirable that Poco's able to extract that extra bit of power out of the Snapdragon 8 Elite, even compared to the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. And speaking of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, you'll definitely be noticing the advantage of having a 1-inch sensor on the main camera and the extra megapixels count on the telephoto camera.